We hear now from Allie Starnes, and she is with Bethany Christian Services. If you would come, please.
Good morning, guys. So I am here with Bethany Christian Services. So I really like to be a little more interactive when I talk. I don't like to do all the talking. So when you all think Bethany Christian Services, what is something you all think? I heard adoption. Any other things? Yeah, care of a pregnant woman. Great. So yeah, that is what Bethany Christian Services is. We do adoptions both domestically, internationally, and our main thing that we do in the Tri-Cities is offer pregnancy counseling to moms kind of in crisis. So in the Tri-Cities, we have our own pregnancy counselor, and we do adoptions also in kind of the regional hospitals. And we have adoption workers in Knoxville who come to our area to kind of facilitate those along with our pregnancy counselor. So a while back when Bethany was kind of evaluating their services and looking, they saw that they were definitely caring for pregnant moms who were thinking about adoption and just in crisis in general. And with pregnancy counseling, our goal isn't to counsel the mom to do adoption, but to really help the mom walk alongside her and help her to see what's best for her and her child. If that's adoption, if that's parenting, if that's kinship, whatever that might be, that's our pregnancy counselor's goal. Not just to place her baby with some of our families, but really just to figure out what's best for that mom and for her child. So when Bethany was evaluating their services, they're like, we've got it on adoption services. We're placing babies with families. We're making sure they're finding their forever families. And we also do older child adoptions as well. But Bethany was thinking and was really wanting to get ahead of the older child adoptions. So they were like, well, what if we had a program that was preventative measure? So like before families got to a point where they were losing their children to DCS, to whatever it might be, to where a child would end up in an older child adoption is what we call them, when kids above the age of 3 are kind of in an area to where they could be adopted. So what if we could get ahead of that crisis that causes the mom and the family to lose their children, and we could step in at that point, and we could help strengthen that family and kind of be that bridge so that they don't actually lose their children, but they're supported and they have community and they have the services they need to not even get to the point to where they're losing their children. So as Bethany Christian Services was thinking through that, there's a program called Safe Families for Children that was also being born in Chicago. So Safe Families for Children, this guy named Dave Anderson, he was in his church one day, and there was a mom who approached him and said, Dave, I'm about to lose my housing, and I need somewhere safe for my kids to go. I don't want to lose my kids. Can they stay with you for a month until I can find housing? And he said, well, of course. And so he welcomed them in, and he was hosting them. Mom came and seen them. They would have dinners together. And during that process, Mom was able to obtain housing, and at the end of that month, these kiddos went back to Mom, and they were able to be a family again in their new house. But had it not been for Dave Anderson standing there and being willing to taking these kiddos in, the state would have probably stepped into that situation and taken those kiddos away. Out of that situation, Dave Anderson is the founder of Safe Families for Children, and he was like, we should make this happen in other places. So Safe Families exist to surround parents in crisis with caring and compassionate communities. So Bethany Christian Services is kind of our professional support for that, and then Safe Families for Children is just one of the programs and services that that Bethany Christian Services offer. So I would love to talk just a little bit more about that today. It's newer in our area, So just to bring more awareness to the Safe Families program. So that's why we exist. We can go ahead and go over to that next slide. So we have 3 main objectives, and that is to prevent kiddos from going into foster care. When kids are hosted through our program, it saves the state, I think it was $37,000 a year if a child is hosted in Safe Families for a year versus in foster care for a year. So it saves the state a lot of money, and it just ends up, it's better for the kiddo when they're hosted with Safe Families because it's an open, more of an open arrangement with mom. She knows where the kiddos are. They call each night. They have it's just like they're at a friend's house type relationship. And then we also want to prevent child abuse. So imagine if you are in a situation and you are the mom or you are the dad, and there is abuse happening in the home, and you want to really protect your kiddos from that, but you know that it's continuing to escalate, and you don't have anywhere else to go. You don't have any family to call. Your mom and dad aren't around. You don't have siblings. There's no fun aunt or uncle. There's nowhere for those kiddos to go. Safe Families can step into those positions and host that kiddo while that mom or that dad gets out of those domestic violence situations. There's also other situations to where mom is just stressed. Being a mom, being a dad, raising kiddos, that's hard work. And so it takes a lot of people to come around families. It takes community, it takes churches, it takes friends and family to help raise kiddos. So being a single mom and feeling like you're on an island is a high stress situation. And we're not meant to live life alone. We serve a relational God. We were created by a relational God, and he wants us to be in relationship with one another. So that's our third objective, is to bring family support and stabilization around those moms and babies and dads. So yeah, let's go ahead and go on to that next slide. So who we are volunteer-driven and professionally supported. So the way that we save the state all of that money is because we have volunteers, like moms and dads, churches, people like you guys out here, that really just step up and want to volunteer and want to love on these babies and these mamas. So we are volunteer-driven and then professionally supported. So Bethany Christian Services has come alongside Safe Families for Children, and they've said, we want to provide your staff and we want to provide leadership development and all of the things that it takes to run a nonprofit. So professionally supported with Bethany Christian Services and volunteer-driven with volunteers like you guys in this room right now. So let's go ahead and flip over to that next slide. How does it all work? So this sounds great, but how do we put kind of feet to this idea? So we have what's called a circle of support. So the family in crisis, that's the family in the middle right there. So to make this a little more tangible, I'm going to use an actual example. So a couple weeks ago, we had a mama call. And she was a mom of 4 children, and her youngest kiddo was sick and in the hospital. She had no family support around here, and so she had 3 other kiddos, and she had a 2-year-old who was in the hospital. And she's like, I can't leave my 2-year-old in the hospital alone. Like, I feel so pulled between the two, because I have 3 kids at home, and I have a 2-year-old in the hospital. I don't know what to do. And if she would have left the hospital, an unattended 2-year-old, that would have brought in DCS and just all of the other referrals that are made when a 2-year-old is alone in the hospital. So in this situation, the referral was made to us, and so mom had found our phone number, our brochure, something somewhere, and called to see if we could host her kiddos, her 3, while she took care of her 2-year-old in the hospital. And so in this situation, we had a couple host families step in, so that's the one up there on the top. So a couple host families stepped in, and they brought the kiddos home for that weekend while their little sibling was being taken care of in the hospital and getting the health care that she needed. And they got to go spend a fun weekend with a new friend. And they went to the park, and they went to the splash pad and did all of the fun things. And still having phone conversations with mom and checking in with little sibling. But that gave that mom that breathing space that she needed to focus on her one little baby who was sick and in the hospital. And the baby came home on Monday. Kiddos went back. They took them to school that morning, and mom picked them up that afternoon. So in that situation, it took a host family. The family coach is kind of what I function as staff. I'm kind of like the caseworker for the situation. So if it is a homeless mom, I'm sure to connect her to resources, make a service plan with her, and she gets all of these services for free so that she is taken well care of. And then family friends are really, really needed for longer term hostings. So another example of a, hosting that we've had for a few months now. We had a little baby whose mom wasn't ready to bring her home from the hospital yet. And so she asked if we could host her for a couple months. And in this situation, DCS was involved. And so it was a little bit longer of a hosting than normal. But mom had to go to work, or our host mom had to go to work. And so she needed someone to stay with this sweet little baby for a couple hours each day so that she could go do her necessary meetings and kind of face-to-face work that she had to do at home. And so that's when a family friend came in. And we had a volunteer that was like, I am not capable to host kiddos in my home, but I still want to serve, I still want to help. And so this retired sweet grandma that we had came and loved on this baby for a few hours each week. So family friends can also function in bringing meals. I'm sure for all of those out there who have had babies, you know how big of a transition that is when you get home, and how big of a blessing just a casserole can be for dinner that night. So bringing meals, just kind of all of those practical needs that come up when you're hosting new kids and trying to get used to new routines and new personalities in the home. That's where our family friends come in. Transportation is also a big need that we also have. So family friends are definitely a big need that we have. So let's go ahead and go on over to the next slide there. So what we offer, we've kind of already talked about what we do offer. We offer time and space for that mom to be able to breathe, a break from daily pressures of parenting, and most importantly, we offer prayer. Our host moms are amazing. Definitely the Lord is working on their heart and growing them in so many ways, and they are just so generous and willing with their time to really just pray for that mama regularly, pray for those kiddos, pray for the dad if it happens to be a dad that's placing, and then spend time with them. So not just stop at praying, but also being willing to, hey, I want to meet you at Chick-fil-A with your kiddos so that we can have lunch together, and the kids can play and we can talk. And really just being a listening ear and a trusted adult in the life of that family. I've seen God use that in so many cool ways. So yeah, we offer prayer and willingness to have spiritual conversations, social connections, and hospitality. So our host families open their home and they invite these families in crisis in for dinner and for play dates and for all the fun things that happen around the table. So let's go ahead and flip on over to the next slide. So who we serve those families. A few examples of situations that we step into are unemployment, loss of job unexpectedly. We're not going to be able to make the bills. We need a couple days just to go for job interviews, to go on the job search. Homelessness, substance abuse, mental illness. Sometimes moms just need a break. They want to go get treatment, but they know if they show up at the treatment center with their 2 kids with them, they're going to go into care. And so that turns a lot of moms away from getting better because they know that if they show up, their kids are going to be taken. We really want to be that bridge of that's not going to be a barrier for you. Like, we want to come alongside you. We want to serve you and your kids both. And we know that the best place for their kiddos is with their mama. So in those situations, we can host kiddos while moms go and get substance abuse treatment. So we have a couple partnerships to where that's happening, and it's really amazing to say, like, if this would have happened sooner, I could have gotten clean a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever it might be. So just to see that problem, and this is a practical solution to that. And then mental illness, same thing with that. And then who do we host? So we don't actually host the parents in the home, but just the children, so under 18. There are some situations to where we'll have a young mom, like a 16-year-old new mom, and so we'll host her and her baby. But most of the time it is just the kiddos, and 70% of our hostings are under the age of 5. So we have lots of littles running around, but it keeps things fun and keeps us all on our toes, so we are okay with that. And then if we'll go on to the next slide there, our impact, so these are kind of our national numbers. I'm going to talk a little bit about our area specifically. Currently we are, I like to say, rapidly growing. Last year we had about 11 hostings, and this year, from January to today, we are already up to 23. So we are definitely kind of doubling in numbers, and the need is great. Each week I usually have to turn away 3 to 4 referrals just because we don't have the host families. So that is definitely a big prayer need that we have, is for more volunteers to kind of step up and just for them to see the need, hear the need, and respond to the need. So yearly, last year was 11, this year we're up to 23. And currently we have 8 active host families in our area. So the more host families we have, the more families in crisis we can surround with love and care, and the more kiddos we can influence for good. So definitely need more volunteers to step up. And so if we'll go ahead and go to the next slide, a couple of things to note. Like I've mentioned before, we're volunteer driven, so we need those volunteers. And it's always temporary. So the thing that really sets us apart from foster care, there's a few things, but one of the main things is when you host with Safe Families, we have a start date and an end date. And on that end date, that kiddo is going to come back home unless some crazy circumstances happen that has changed that. But with Safe Families, there is a, for sure, beginning date and an end date. With Safe Families, the parents also do not lose custody. So parents still have full custody, as it is a volunteer-driven from host families. It is also volunteer-driven from these parents in crisis. They sign over guardianship so that the host mom and dad have authority to make health decisions and take them to the doctor and pick them up from daycare and kind of do all of those parenting things, but mom maintains full custody. So if she gets halfway through her hosting and she's like, I'm ready to have my kids back today, she goes and picks them up. There's no, they're able to change their mind at any point because it is volunteer. We're not foster care. And the goal is to kind of be that first response to a crisis, so to prevent the crisis before it kind of turns into more than what it needs to be. So if we'll go ahead and go to the next one, we're almost done here. So how to get involved. So there's one of my favorite things about Safe Families is there is a way for everyone to serve. There's a way for youth to serve, all the way up to grandparents, for whole churches, for small groups. There's a way to get involved in any way, any gifting, any skill set, any way you want to serve. There's a need there. So we have host families. So those are the ones who actually host the kiddos in their home. We have family friends, and those are the ones who kind of help out the host family. And then we also have resource friends, and a lot of times those will kind of overlap because the family friend is usually like, well, I don't want to just help one side, I want to help both. But we have that separation in case we have a friend that wants to just do one, which is totally fine too. But for the resource friend, that is specifically to the family in crisis. And then a family coach is kind of my role. So if you have a heart for case management, more of like the social work realm of things, ideally when the program grows, we'll have more family coaches in the area. And that can also be, you can also serve on that in a volunteer level. And then the other two ways you can be involved is to donate. We're always in need of car seats, blankets, onesies, snuggles, all the things. And financially, we are a nonprofit as well, and so we are supported by donations. And then pray. Pray is probably the biggest need that we have up there, especially for our area, being newer in our area. We can't do anything apart from prayer. So we always want, if there is a prayer group that wants to pray regularly, we are all for that. We need that 1,000%. So prayer is probably the biggest need that we have. And then we'll go ahead and skip the next slide and go to the next one. So yeah, that is Safe Families for Children through Bethany Christian Services. Do you guys have any questions about Safe Families or Bethany or both, either?
This is a little bit of maybe a broken question. I'm just curious, since I'm a little bit embarrassed to ask, but Allie, do you have any host families from this church?
We do not.
Okay, just curious. Thanks.
Of course. We would love to have some, though. And so kind of the next step to that, if you're interested and you want more information, you want to volunteer, you think you have a friend who's like, oh, well, they would love to host some children. I have some cards out in the fellowship hall, and there's my card, and then there's a volunteer form that you can fill out to get more involved. So the next step would just be to contact me. Yes.
The admissions committee has a list of things that you can bring. Could you name some of the things that people can buy and bring in the form of supplies that people might need?
Yeah, for sure. It seems like we are also always in need of infant carriers, so infant car seats. Currently, we have a lot of toddler car seats, so probably infant car seats would be a big one. And then any type of infant seats, like bouncies, bumbos, kind of things like that. That's a big need. Play mats. Those are kind of the top three that's coming to my mind, but I can definitely give you a more thought through list and email it to Christy. Would that be the best person? Okay. Great. Yes. So our office for the Tri-Cities is in Johnson City, so right next to Cardinal Park, in the Memorial Park community there, and it's on 100 Dyer Street is our address. But we service the whole Tri-Cities area. Yes. Yeah, so in the Tri-Cities, last year we had 5. Our kind of, if you think of discipleship, multiplication, our hub office is in Knoxville, and they do a lot more than us, but they're definitely still growing the Tri-Cities office, so hopefully one day we'll be independent, but we're still definitely kind of a child of Knoxville. Yes? We have a couple of grants, but we are a nonprofit, so no, we don't have government funding. All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you guys.